What would you do if you were 10 times bolder? That is the question that we want to explore today on today's podcast episode. Today, we're interviewing a friend, Nora McIntosh, and how she heard that in her life. And it has just transformed the trajectory of where she is going. And Steve and I always love to bring people on the show that have authority, that have walked through something and have come out stronger on the other side. So today, we're so excited to dive in with Nora as she shares her story of becoming 10 times bolder and how that has transformed her life. So Nora, we're so excited to have you on today. Welcome.
Oh, thanks guys. It's so good to be with you. I'm just really, just really excited. Thanks for having me.
So Nora, like, where did this start? Where did you first hear this? What would you do if 10 times bolder? And how did it feel? Like, how did you know? I think there's these things in our lifetimes you hear them and you're like, that's for me. Like, how did you know that was for you in this next season?
Yeah, well, it just started a little over a year ago. I was just in a season of just major discouragement in a lot of different areas. I felt stuck. Like I was in that space where I knew that there was something more for me, but I just didn't know how to get from where I was to what I was really dreaming about. And I just didn't know. So I was listening to just some video clips on YouTube. And one of them was the speaker that I follow. And he posed a question. He said, what would you do if you were 10 times bolder? If you're doing anything other than that, then fear has diminished you. And so I heard that and I just knew that that was me, that there were areas in my life where I felt stuck and diminished. And I just didn't want to let fear be the filter through which I made decisions. And so that is the thing that really just started me on this journey. So I made a list of things and that was the beginning, really.
Wow. So you made a list of things off of that that were what it would look like when you're bolder, or did you make a list of the fears? Which side of the thing did you lean into?
I made a list of things that I would do if fear wasn't holding me back. Because when I really thought about it, I thought, gosh, how many actions would I take if I wasn't afraid? Like, I've also heard a question like, what would you do if you weren't afraid? What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? But I always just kind of filtered that through like, well, yeah, I feel like I am going to fail and I don't really want to fail. So I'm not going to do that because failing's terrible. So I just started looking at my life and taking stock of the areas where I felt stuck, and make a list of like, okay, well, I feel a lot of fear. I was very afraid. Fear is something that I've often battled with. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make a list and I'm going to just start doing things. So it started off with simple things. Like I was having kind of I had a relationship that wasn't super healthy. And I was like, okay, you know what? I think it's time, like that door needs to close. Like that's something that scares me, but it's like, I need to say no to that in order to be open to whatever whatever the next yes is. And then I also, it was also my birthday coming up and I had this crazy idea to post my Starbucks card on the internet. And I was like, that's really scary, but I'm in this season of doing things that I would do if I was 10 times bolder. So I posted my Starbucks card on the internet for my birthday. And it was one of those things where I was like, this could either be terrible or great. And it was actually on.
And there's no limit on this credit card?
No. So I mean, I did some mental calculations before, like how many followers do I have? Like what could the damage really be? Who are the random people that follow me? I'm not like that popular. So, let's see like what could it be? But it was really just a leap of faith. I really felt like I was supposed to do it. And I did it and it ended up being the best birthday ever. So I'll just stop there. But those are some of the things that like were on the beginning of the list.
That's amazing. I feel like we've heard one of our mentors say like fear sometimes is the door. Like if you can step through fear, what's on the other side is so powerful. And not only that, like sometimes you have to do intentional things like this that actually break fear off your life, because fear and faith, let's call it on the other side of things, or boldness, right? Like are kind of opposite like forces, right? And just like light and dark can't ever overpower light. Light will always overpower, but sometimes you need to flip a switch, right, to overpower the dark. And so sometimes these fear things can be holding you back. And so I love how you had just strategic like actions that you would take that were like, I'm going to take a step of faith in this. We actually did a very similar thing where we knew we were meeting with someone. It was like a charity thing and they were asking for money. And we really felt like in that season, we were supposed to just break this power of kind of fear of scarcity of money.
Yeah.
And felt like what it looked like in that situation was at this coffee meeting or lunch meeting to actually hand this person a piece of paper and say, like, whatever you write on this piece of paper, we will commit to monthly for you in this charity, because we felt we wanted to support this person. But it was that step of faith, and it was so cool. The number that he wrote was totally doable, right? But it was that scary, like, oh my gosh, what if he writes something that we feel like we couldn't afford? But I felt like, in that season of life, really, we felt like God was telling us, whatever this guy writes, I'll provide for. Wow. And so it was that step of faith to do that. And we still support him to this day at that number that he wrote. And it was, I think, a step of faith for him too, to be like, how much are you going to ask for? Right. Wow. It was kind of a thing for both of us that we were like, whoa, this is different. And I love these actions that break kind of these things that can hold us back. Take us on this journey. So those are some of the first things you did.
Yeah.
You had this relationship thing. You did the Starbucks thing. Where did you go next?
Yeah. So the Starbucks thing, that was really the catalyst, because it was one of those things where, I was thinking, gosh, like the thing that always held me back from doing anything like that was just, what's the worst case scenario? I'm scared of that happening. I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to hold back. And so for that one, I was thinking, oh my gosh, what if like I just get completely bankrupted? And then my mind just went to like, and then I'm like, 50 years old and a cat lady and like doing people's taxes. And it was just like these, like, you're like, the mind, when fear's like running the show, it just goes these places. It's like not even possible. And it was like, okay, so, but actually, like, and for me, that was like a thing that I didn't want to go to. And I heard this voice tell me, like, that's the kind of place you're going to end up if you let fear hold you back. If you don't take leaps, if you don't make room for miracles to happen, if you just, step into the uncertainty zone. So so after the Starbucks thing, that was a huge mindset shift for me. And it really made me think about, gosh, like, what is my destiny if I don't let fear, like, call the shots? And it was really like, I want to see myself as a venture capitalist of people. I want to start investing in people. I want to, and what would that look like? Because, coming from like I come from a background in accounting and finance. I just knew, like, okay, you invest in companies that you believe in to help them grow, and people similarly, like if you buy them a cup of coffee, give them encouragement, that like helps. Like, who knows, that could be the catalyst to like change their day, change their life. Who knows? So after that, the next thing I decided to do was I booked a seat at a writer's workshop down in San Diego, led by someone named Bob Goff, who is somebody I really look up to. He's an author and a speaker and a former lawyer. He's really cool. I had a major imposter syndrome, but I just felt like, if I want to encourage people, I got to get around people who are going to like pull me into my destiny. And like, I couldn't think of a more encouraging person. So that was the next step. I went down to San Diego, and it was like, it changed my life. I went to this writer's workshop and just got around like business leaders and creatives and musicians, writers, people who are just all like wanting to learn how to craft stories, just to bring encouragement into people's lives.
And so cool, because that's what you're really doing right now, just sharing this story, because I even feel people listening to this going like, wow, what would this look like in my life if I was 10 times bolder? What if fear wasn't diminishing me? Right. And what was it like going to this writer's workshop? Were you a writer before this, or was it just like, I feel like I'm supposed to do this, like I'm just going to jump in?
It was seriously, it was really scary. There's a whole theme. I did things that were scary, and I was scared. So I've always enjoyed writing. I've always enjoyed telling stories. Really, I enjoy connecting with people. But no, I hadn't really been writing. It was weird. I'd taken some writing courses. I'd done some. I actually like wrote something like a short screenplay that like did like that, that like was in a contest or something, but I wasn't like I didn't consider myself a writer. And so when I thought about paying a bunch of money to go down to be with other serious writers, I had major imposter syndrome, because my mind was like, I don't belong there. Like, those people, like, this is the kind of thing for people that are serious, and I'm not serious because I haven't been doing this. But again, I felt like the investment wasn't in what I had done. It was the investment in getting around people that were further along than me, because I wanted to invest in getting around people to pull me into my destiny. And so, as I was driving down there, I was just honestly praying for divine appointments to just connect with people that would become lifelong friends. And that's what happened. Like, I met some people that I have like kept in touch with to this day. And it's just been super fun, like having them in my life now. And they're definitely pulling me into my destiny. And, I hope that I can do the same for them.
That's incredible. How did you, as you're driving down there, you're talking about doing things that are really scary. Imposter syndrome, I think, wants to creep in on so many levels whenever you try something new, whether you have, some degree of, like you tried this before, some degree, even like an actual degree or something that gives you credentials to say that you're a part of the club, the writers club. But how were there like practical things that you did? I know you're starting with, if I lived 10 times bolder. So you already have this thing that's backing you. You already have some stories of like, okay, I did this thing that was really scary and everything's turning out all right. But how did you in that moment overcome imposter syndrome? Because I think that likes to creep in for so many people when they're trying something new or doing it for the 100th time,
Yeah, that's a good question. And honestly, I'm still figuring it out. I'm still dealing with I was dealing with imposter syndrome yesterday. You should have seen me. But so it's like, I think the number one thing is just accept the fact that it's very normal. And if you're dealing with it, like, you're in great company with like the entire population of the world. And yeah, I mean, I think that also the other thing with imposter syndrome is like, okay, doing something scary is really hard. Doing something that you've never done before, doing something that you feel like you're unqualified in, that's hard. But the other thing that's really hard is staying stuck and being discouraged and feeling disappointed with, the results you've been getting from doing the same thing. So it's sort of like being stuck is hard, having imposter syndrome is hard. Why not try the new thing and just see what happens? Because even if something fails, like, there's so much to be proud of and so much to learn from just trying, and you never know unless you try. And like, that's how growth comes in. And I'm such a big believer in the growth mindset of just trying new things. And even if it doesn't fail, like, what did you learn from it? And that's beautiful.
So cool.
I totally agree. I think that in life, there's things that Stephen and I say this a lot, like, that want to come knocking again.
Yeah.
And you were just saying, like, I experienced fear, I experienced imposter syndrome, and I didn't fully overcome it. Like, it's knocking on my door. Like, you should have seen me a few days ago, And I think that you explained something that is so important, and that is to keep trying things.
Yeah.
And you have a choice in that moment to let imposter syndrome or fear or whatever it is keep you where you're at.
Yeah.
Like, you have to ask, do I want to stay where I'm at, or am I willing to get uncomfortable to change and to grow?
Exactly.
And that is, that's growth. You have to get uncomfortable. It's not, if it were easy, everybody would be doing it, and so it's okay to get a little messy, get uncomfortable, and to have that mindset shift that you've had, that it's like, I'm actually not failing. Yeah. Like, it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's hard because like the other day I was just dealing with that, but I just think to myself, I don't want easy. I want destiny. I don't want comfortable. I want destiny. And I'll like look at myself in the mirror and actually say that. Like, I know you guys talk about your like mantras, and I love it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm so uncomfortable right now. This is actually like really hard, but I don't want easy. I want destiny. And, like, you read, just stories of people that have gone through just major transformations, or, all the amazing movies. Like, it's not like they had an easy life, but they overcame it. And that's what makes a good story.
That's so amazing. I remember me and Chelsea went to a mastermind event. We flew out, and this was a pretty high level event that, again, we felt like going into this room is like, who are we to be in this room, right? That's the idea. And I remember this is just like, I'm making this practical for everyone, because in those situations, like, I am actually more of an introvert. If you see me online, I may come across as an extrovert, but that's something I've learned. Yeah, I've learned in business that I need to ambivert, right? I need to kind of flow between both. I do need my recharge time, but I like to make connections, to network, like to talk with people, to lead people. So I got to harness the inner extrovert a little bit. And so at these events, Like I always am like, I want to meet people. Like I'm here to meet people. There's the value is in the room. I need to talk to people. I can't just sit alone and eat my lunch, you know?
Yeah.
And so I forced myself into it. And it's so funny because at this event, I literally was just like messing up every single person's name. And Chelsea was like, you got to stop doing that. Like, you got to stop doing it. But I just kept doing it because I knew I had to take that step of faith. What I would do, and this, I'd probably do this differently, but I would go up to someone and like, I thought I knew them. I'd be like, oh my gosh, Brian, like you're the Amazon guy, right? And they'd be like, oh no, like I'm Kevin and I do real estate, right? And I just like kept like, I don't know, my brain thought they were someone else or something. And I would just go in like trying to like meet people and I'd mess up their name like every time. Like this was happening like multiple times at this event, to the point where Chelsea's just like don't try and guess what they do. Just like ask them like you've never known them before, you know? And like, but it was just that step of it. I had to break that fear of like, what if I look dumb? Because even though I would mess that up right at the beginning, like it just opened up this conversation like, oh my gosh, that's funny. Like you reminded me of this guy because blah, blah, blah. And it would just start like some conversation. And it was just that open door, right?
Yeah.
And even though I fumbled my way into those conversations, some of those relationships ended up being really valuable connections for our business. And if I just sat alone at the lunch table, not willing to break fear and go talk to people, even though it was like awkward, right? It like would have held me back. So I'm just sharing that practical example because sometimes stepping through this door of fear looks like stepping into like, what would I look like if I was 10x bolder? Like, what would my even identity look like if I wasn't holding back this part of myself? Because at the heart of it, like I do want to connect with people. The heart of it, I do want to have relationships, but something, you know, is telling me, oh, well, you know, maybe just sit here and people will come to you. Right? That's not the case. And so I had to break that. And now at events, like I'm very much the extrovert that is talking to people because I've just learned that skill over time to lean into that. So I love how you did that with the conference. What was like the next kind of fear wall that we wanted to overcome in this journey?
So I would say sort of the climax of this like, you know, past year was a couple months after I got back from San Diego. And I had connected with a bunch of people down there and I was like, okay, what is next? And I felt like I just really wanted to do something that scared me, which was traveling by myself. Traveling, but not just like traveling down like a road trip. I love road trips, but that was a big step too. But actually flying across the country and exploring places that I never have. Like I've always wanted to, you know, travel, but I always just felt like I was held back because I didn't have, you know, the right people to go with me, the right friends, or just the right timing. But I started just making a list of like, okay, setting aside the fear, where would I go if, you know, there was no limit? So I made some lists of some different states, some different people that I knew and started sketching it out. And then I just kind of started reaching out to people and saying like, hey, I'm thinking about traveling across the country. Like, would you be around? What do you think? And you know, just this itinerary opened up for me to just go to a couple different states, and just spend some time with people over the period of like 2 or 3 weeks. And the goal was just to meet up with some people and really just explore. So I ended up, and I was kind of nervous, and I was also kind of nervous about taking off time. So I was like, I prayed. I was like, okay, God, like if this is something that you have for me, like give me a sign. Like, would you even like send some like money my way to like make this like extra possible? And then like that happened. I got a response that happened like within a couple hours of me praying that. So I was like, okay, I feel like I'm supposed to do this. It was just a crazy sign. I was like, okay, that was wild. I didn't actually expect that to happen. Now I've got to go. So I ended up going. It's kind of random places, but I love them. I went to Oklahoma. I went to Tennessee. I rented a Dodge Charger and drove from Tennessee to Kentucky, and I saw where Secretariat lives. And then I ended up going to Delaware for my cousin's wedding, and then I went to South Carolina with my brother to just explore. And really, it was like the goal is to explore, connect with people, see people that I love, and just see what else happens along the way. And before I embarked on that trip, I was like, I had a list of things that I was really wanting breakthrough in that I was concerned about, that I had been worried about for a long time. Mainly, I had been in accounting and finance, really good at it, but I wanted to switch into something new. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to just surrender this and go on this trip. And so I did. I had this amazing time. And then I came back and I ended up connecting with someone at my current company who started mentoring me and taught me SQL and engineering skills. And I actually like made a transition into like data science. And it was like all this happened just from like this crazy trip. And then I came back and then boom, like the thing I'd been praying for like happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you went from like one industry to another just from kind of having your heart open to what if this could be different, right?
Well, it was interesting because I had already been in the data industry without really realizing it because I worked so much with like financial data, accounting data, Excel, all these things. But then I just kind of learned some skills to like add into it. And then it opened up this whole new world for me of data, like the actual industry of data. I was like, I had already been doing it without realizing it, but then having someone come in, it's always so powerful to have an outsider come in and look at you and say, like, I know you guys talk about calling out the gold, like to say, hey, you actually know more than you think you do. And actually, let me show you how that translates over here. And that's what this person did for me. And then I was like, whoa, this is like a whole new direction that I was already heading in, but I didn't even see it until he kind of like added in that factor. So, who would have, I felt so irresponsible, by the way, doing this trip, but then that was the thing that got me the biggest breakthrough beyond like, analyzing everything to death.
Wow. Mm-hmm. What did you find on the trip as you were kind of driving across the country? You're in the Dodge Charger. Like, were there even tests in the trip of like boldness? Like, things that was just like, are you still going to do this? Are you still going to do this? Even in a relaxation mode, still have that adventurous spirit of what does boldness look like even on this trip?
Well, I just really felt like being in that mode of just, facing all my fears. I just realized, you know what, like, sometimes I think it's possible to get so used to being in a certain mindset or a certain mode of like, okay, I've always kind of felt this fear, so this is just who I am. And it's easy to think like, oh, just because I've always thought this way, just because I've always operated this way, this is just the way it is. But I really saw myself like just coming alive in a way that I hadn't really been familiar with before. I got to know myself in a new way, and I realized this is who I was designed to be. Like, this is how I'm supposed to be, not this other fearful Nora. Like, bold explorer Nora is the real Nora. So it just showed me like who I am. It's like, and so I really started to challenge myself. How can I hold on to this? How can I hold on to myself always, even when I'm met with like things that might tend to make me feel insecure, like an imposter. And really just having conversations with people. Like there was one conversation, I'm more of an introvert too, naturally. And I was on an airplane from Oklahoma to Tennessee, and I almost missed my flight because security took a really long time, even though it was in the morning. And so I almost missed my flight, just got on windows, but by a miracle, there was a window seat and there was a seat right next to me that was open. And then, so then the plane door is about to close. This one kid comes on the plane and he looks even more haggard than me. Like I could tell that like he had just been through the same experience. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And so I was hoping though that he would sit somewhere else. But he ended up sitting right next to me. And so I was like, oh, dang it. I was so ready to just stare out the window and kind of just be by myself because it was really early morning. But I was like, are you, did you just, go through security? And he's like, yes, like, the gel that I put in my hair set off their bomb detector, and I had to take me back. I was like, oh my God, me too. So, but I kept talking to him because he was like, he told me that he worked at Costco, and he just seems so smart. And so I just wanted to know more about him. And so I was like, hey, like, what would you do if money was no object? Like, what do you dream about? And he was like, honestly, I would disappear. And I was like, wait, what? And he was like, no, I would want to disappear because I had a traumatic brain injury a year ago, and it completely changed my personality, and I don't recognize myself. And I was like, I was just like, grappling with like what to say to him because I just wasn't expecting that answer. But he showed me the pictures of the crash that he was in, and he said, they had to pull my car out of a ditch. Like it was honestly a miracle that he survived. And so I see these pictures and I'm like, you know what? It is not an accident that you are alive. Like there is a plan for your life and it's a good one. And so just what would you do if you were 10 times bolder? I asked him that. And then he started talking about all these dreams, all these things. Like he's so amazing. He wants to do music. He wants to help people. And just even like asking someone like that, a question like that is so powerful because it gets them to get out of the like defeat mode and just get into like what they're dreaming about. And so he starts thinking like, maybe I should call my dad and like meet up with him. And maybe the next step is like to go over here, take this journey. Yeah. And so then the plane landed and we went our separate ways, but like, that was honestly one of my favorite interactions of that trip and of my whole life because it just made me realize like, I never want to like let fear hold me back from saying hi to someone. And if I feel prompting to, like, I never want to assume I know what someone's story is. And I just want to be this person always. Even though it can be hard to be that person always, like I want to. So that's really what I took away, and just really carried into this year too.
I love that. You are making me like rethink so many things as I'm hearing you share. Just, I feel like we need to get stickers that say like, what would you do if you were 10 times bolder? And like, I feel like I need to write it on my mirror and look at it every day, because there are moments like even when you're tired or like you've had an off day, and just like to shake that off and just say like, what would I do? Like, how would I show up for people? And I love how you said, I never want to assume somebody's story or assume what they thought, you know what I mean? Just to like step out in boldness. So I love that you are encouraging not only Stephen and I, but our listeners, because in life or in business or in parenting or whatever it is, it's like, there's always a new level that you can step into. So thank you for sharing. I would love to know, Nora, as we kind of like close up, like what are some things, I know that this has been like a life-changing year for you, and then going into 2022, I know that you are choosing to walk this out, but what are some things that are like next on your list, big and small, that you are either wanting to do or is that you're considering like, this is like a next thing that I'm doing because of this boldness, because of this breakthrough?
Oh gosh. Well, I have to say, just continuing to go into the world of data science and engineering is a big one. That's like something where I battle, I love it. There's so much to learn. Like no matter how much you learn in data science, there's always more to learn. So I'd say that is a huge one right now. I'd also say, dating and marriage. That's kind of scary, but I want to do that too. And I also would say traveling internationally would be really cool. I've done that before, but I've never done it by myself. So that's something that I've been thinking about a lot as well. So
awesome. I love those goals. I want to let you know that you can I encourage you to go wherever that you want to go on the traveling. I think I was either 19 or 20. I forget how it was. And I had never traveled internationally. I don't even know if I had left
outside the time zone.
And there was a young family that lived in the town that we live in, Chico, that I had kind of like gotten to know, and they moved overseas. They had 2 little girls, and it was during my January extended winter break. And they had always said like, you can come anytime. Like my family also like supported just the work that they were doing. Actually in Bulgaria, they worked with a lot of orphans and still do to this day. And I was just like, I'm going to go visit you guys. And so I think I was like 19 years old, and I flew across the country all by myself and stayed with this family. And it was very much like life-changing. I look back on it and I think I am very surprised at like the boldness of how I was just like, I'm doing this, and like the travel and all that, but it was so worth it. So I'm excited for you when you do travel internationally, because it's going to be amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Now, Nora, I feel like I see you as being like really carrying this message. I think this message is so impactful. I mean, just having a conversation with someone like that on the plane you may have even changed his complete trajectory of his life just with that one conversation. Just like I feel like this podcast is probably stirring in someone listening that very same thing of like, I'm going to go on a year's journey and maybe longer on this exact thing, like 10x bolder. So I really see you carrying this message. I see more like speaking opportunities coming up for you, just sharing this journey. I think it's so perfect you went to a Bob Goff like conference, because he really carries the same kind of like, I'm just going to do it. He just like quit on a Thursday, right? Like he just quit his job because it's Thursday. And then he decided to like do this whole other thing. And like, he's never let that fear hold him back. So he has a book called, what is it? Dream Big or Big?
Yep.
Dream Big. Chelsea and I read that book, and it was such this, like, if you guys want to go deeper on this topic, lean into some of these things. And Nora, how can people connect with you online? Do you have a social media profile they could follow if they want to just connect with you or just follow the journey in stepping out?
Yeah. So I have 2 Instagram accounts. My personal one it's Nora Explora. And then I also have one that I recently started called Live 10X Boulder. So you can follow me on either one of those accounts. And I'd love to connect with you guys.
Awesome.
So good.
I'm excited about both of those accounts, but I love that you have a 10x bolder one, because I definitely feel like there's some things that will be moving in that direction for you, because you just share this message so beautifully, and the world needs to hear it. So thank you so much, Nora, for being on today. Listeners, I really hope that you get connected to Nora and on her journey. So thank you so much for being on with us today.
Thank you guys for having me. It's been an absolute honor. I love you guys, and it's just been awesome reconnecting with you. So thanks.
All right. Bye-bye. We'll see you guys in the next show.